Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the 71st Annual Alfred Korzybski Memorial Lecture and Symposium. We are in our final day, but we have a lot of great things in store for you. Hello to everyone out in streaming land. Thank you for all of those folks who showed up here for breakfast hour at the Players Club. We're going to get started right away so we can get through all of the wonderful presentations that we have. And I'd like you to join me in welcoming our first presenter. We'll be hearing from Josh Clements of Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, who's presenting An Ounce of Prevention, General Semantics, and Conspiracy Theories. Josh.
All right, morning, everybody. Morning. A couple things. I want to say thank you to Corey Anton for giving me a chance to write this piece and give me feedback on it, provoking me to do it. And thanks to Lance for giving me a chance to be up here. Without him, I would be here, so this is really cool. It's cool to be here with all you people. A few things that were said over the weekend that kind of pertain to some of what I'm going to talk about. There's that echo. So Martin Levinson said yesterday in reference to the January 6th event, he said that if some of those people had heard or learned from General Semantics, that perhaps they would have acted otherwise. Yesterday, Maria Polsky quoted Mary Lyman's, what's that?
Turn it up more, there's going to be feedback.
Turn it up?
Put the mic in front of
Face
your
it
mouth.
up, face it up. There you go.
Okay,
There
how's
you
that?
go. Perfect.
All right. So Maria Polsky quoted Mary Lyman yesterday and said that Korzybski's intent was to create a teachable system where everyone can learn. And so kind of my speech today is a little bit about an aspiration of what General Semantics can help to do for people who have conspiratorial thinking, which we all do. All right, so again, this is an ounce of prevention, General Semantics and conspiracy theories. So I want to start with Neil Postman, something he wrote in The End of Education. He said, the history of learning is an adventure in overcoming our fears or our errors. There's no sin in being wrong. The sin is in our unwillingness to examine our own beliefs and in believing that our authorities cannot be wrong. Far from creating cynics, such a story is likely to foster a healthy and creative skepticism. So I want to talk a little bit about that creative skepticism. You've probably all heard of conspiracy theories. A lot of my research has been on QAnon. My first time up here, I spoke about that. You've heard of Pizzagate. Maybe you've heard of Watergate. Some of you have heard of Watergate? So, these things they're tied to our democracy and how we navigate community and these kind of things. But sometimes what I want to be careful of is some scholars have called for curing conspiratorial thinking. Cass Sunstein, Adrian Vermeulen, 2009 wrote an article about curing conspiracy theories. And I want to be kind of hesitant about that because sometimes conspiracy theories turn out to be correct. There was Henrietta Lacks. There's the Tuskegee experiments. There's many things that turn out to be correct. Also, one particular scholar, Usinski, he talked about how America was founded as a conspiracy theory, that the British government was conspiring against Americans. So I want to be careful about making claims that we should cure. But maybe we can help the thinking by preventing some of the dogmatic ways of seeing the world. All right. So General Semantics is a way forward for me. Alfred Korzybski is always somebody said this yesterday, he's always kind of been attentive to democracy. He wrote that we argue so much today about democracy versus totalitarianism. Democracy presupposes intelligence of the masses. Totalitarianism does not in the same degree. But a democracy without intelligence of the masses under modern conditions can be a worse human mess than any dictatorship could be. So how does general semantics fit into this? Despite the need for balance, one of the major issues surrounding conspiratorial thinking is that mistaking the map for the territory, such as giving individual agency to the working class or the 1%. Conspiratorial thinking is also monological. It tends to be this kind of fixed mindset where everything just kind of is this way, right? A common phrase you often hear with conspiracy theories is, well, it is what it is, but we know that it is what it isn't. So the mindset that these people have, Gregory Bateson wrote about this. He said, epistemological error is often reinforced and therefore self-validating. You get along all right in spite of the fact that you entertain at rather deep levels of the mind premises which are simply false. If kept in check, this type of error is tolerable to a point, Bateson suggested, as long as it's not allowed to grow like a weed or parasite and choke out clear judgment. Hence, as the phrase goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So once these are deeply rooted and invasive, the closed mindset that these conspiratorial thinking can sometimes have can lead to intuitive rather than rational thinking. Conspiracy theorists take various bits of information strung together around a motive of how authorities use their power or maintain it, and they create these compelling stories. Daniel Kahneman talked about those narratives create a what you see is all there is kind of framework that you can't just not see it. And I loved yesterday's talk with Jermaine. He talked about the parallels between Kahneman's thinking and Gregory Bateson's primary one, primary two. So that gets all involved in this as well. But the narratives that these people create, or we all create them, form cognitive maps of a history of events and how they lead to a certain future. However, we know that map is not the territory. In this case, the cognitive map looks very little like the territory. Okay, how many people have you seen out there, some cabal, abducting children for, to get their blood? So it's just, come on. All right. Korzybski, last night was Halloween. About vampires, right? So Korzybski illustrated this point in one of his lectures. He said, we take a map in which the towns are in the wrong order. Now, such a map is not fit to travel by. We do not have predictability for traveling by such a map. Then such a map is harmful. All right, mental maps, the things that we create, they cannot accurately model an objective reality without the individual's subjective experience. People see the world as they are, not as it is. All right, so if people perceive a power imbalance in the world, they will likely believe it's due to certain factors, not their particular worldview. The mistaken universal reality that this creates and the closed mindset that we often see in conspiratorial thinking coincides with the allness mentality, meaning individuals who maintain an allness attitude typically resist any new information that might come to light on the topic. Once the theorist forms this coherent story, it pervades everything. The phenomenon that Kahneman talked about, again, is what you see is all there is. To combat this, we can use the second non-Aristotelian principle, which is non-allness, which reminds us that our perception and knowledge about a thing, I'm quoting Dr. Straight here, which reminds us that our perception and knowledge about any given event or object is necessarily incomplete, and all the more so our depictions and descriptions. Training in general semantics teaches us to remember that there is always more to learn about anything. This is the nature of it, etc. Another tactic suggested by general semantics to combat allness is self-referential statements, to me, or it seems. For instance, one might say, to me, the Republicans can do a better job reaching out to minority populations, or it seems like Democrats typically want more government oversight. Straight described this as the third non-Aristotelian principle, the principle of self-reflexiveness. Adopting this tactic may help conspiracy theorists recognize that their understanding of and statements about an event or a set of events are not ultimately generalizable to everyone. All right. Korzybski also advocated for the indexing and dating, and all these things can play a factor in how we approach conspiratorial thinking. So intentional, like taking an extensional view rather than an intentional. And what he meant was intentional means an Aristotelian definition by properties. It's focusing on the generalities This type of definition is never adequate to cover all individual cases properly. So it's the focus kind of on, rather than it's taking the case and trying to generalize that to the set and say that it is this way at all times. All right. An extensional view, on the flip side, means a mathematical or semantic definition. This type of definition is that properly exhibits the individual case. Applying this type of view would require a conspiratorial thinker to evaluate each scenario, fact, or tidbit of information on its own merits instead of how they might automatically fit into the chosen narrative. Without merely accepting information, a thought, or a comment at face value, a person exhibiting an extensional orientation would ask such questions as, well, how do I know that? Or how do you know that? Or where did that thought come from? What evidence is there to support this claim, etc.? All right. One could easily see how an extensional orientation and questions such as the ones above could help not only conspiratorial thinking, but embody the meaning of critical thinking in general. Again, dating, I'm going to move ahead a little bit to kind of get through because I know we want to get through some of this. So the indexing, dating, all these tactics can help conspiratorial thinking. Ultimately, Korzybski pointed to the problem of abstraction, which is the ultimate problem for much of this. The process of our nervous systems through sensory inputs, selecting certain characteristics about a given object or event or territory, and building a mental description, a map, as a way of understanding. The error in this cognitive mapping process is not what is included, but what gets left out. Through awareness of the abstracted process, conspiracy theorists could recognize their limited perception of the events they describe and edit or adjust their claims accordingly. At minimum, they might be able to see where the theorists err and take a more agnostic approach. And we'll do one time. 5 minutes, okay. So speaking of an agnostic approach, Robert Anton Wilson. Most of you may have heard that name. He spoke as a general semantics advocate. Well, he had this word, and he believed wholeheartedly with Korzybski about the symbol rulers, who controls the narrative, controls the symbols, that kind of thing. Well, I want to share one quick word that he advocated for, and it's this word called some but all. All right, maybe you're familiar with this, right? Some but not all. When we have, this is that self-reflexiveness, this is that moment taking a step back, we might recognize, well, maybe some Republicans are, pains in the rear end, maybe some Democrats are whatever, maybe some whatever. Yeah, okay, but not all. This is where some but all. And I've adopted this frame kind of myself, just trying to tell myself, hey, some but all. When you're watching the news or you're over at different places and you're hearing somebody make a claim, my first thought is, maybe, but not all. All right. So again, a lot of this comes back to epistemology, comes back to ways of thinking. Wilson called his way of thinking a guerrilla ontology. So we're constantly kind of subverting our way of thinking and questioning it. And that's healthy to me. It's always making me learn something new. So ultimately, conspiracy theories and their underlying modes of thinking make for an interesting case study. They are in many ways important to the ongoing experiment we call democracy. However, one cannot acknowledge their utility without addressing their potential danger. The conversation does not have to be binary, however. As illustrated in my talk today, taking a middle ground approach may protect the free thought and needed in democracy while also encouraging a healthy skepticism of personal beliefs and perceptions. This is that moderation that Valerie Peterson talked about yesterday. Maybe mediation would be a better word. I don't know. By embracing general semantics principles early and following the suggestions of Korzybski and Robert Anton Wilson, conspiracy theorists may temper their dogmatic beliefs, adjust their claims about people or events, and realize their maps do not always reflect the territory accurately. I do not, however, believe that this aspirational goal will be easy, but it's worthy nonetheless. Calls for conspiracy thinking, for curing conspiracy thinking, dismiss the need for different modes of thinking, modes that help us question authority and often lead to new understanding. However, we can learn to think more critically and scientifically while also questioning the authority of the symbol rulers. Perhaps Straight articulated this issue most accurately, stating, when everyone is able to think and operate like scientists, humanity will be able to function in a mature, rational, peaceful, and fair manner. General Semantics has the tools to help us get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.